Again, we're giving you a preview to the State of the Nation address that the President, John Dramani Mahama, would be giving before members of Parliament to the whole nation indeed. And we all know it is going to be his last before we have the polls in the first Monday of November 2016. It just happens to fall on November 7, 2016. But we know from the last State of the Nation address, importantly, we're facing issues of a power crisis that also needed to be addressed urgently. And the President presented that very State of the Nation address, giving all the assurances to the people of Ghana that his government will do something about it. So we're here. If you want to get interactive, very easy for you to do so. On Facebook, we have Joy News on TV. It is a platform which has been linked to our Twitter handle at Joy News on TV. And also a number we have on WhatsApp, 056-800,000. But right now, you are on YouTube. Please make sure you log on to our channel, My Joy Online, for which we're streaming live this very programming and the rest of programming on this very channel. I have to introduce my guests, and they'll give us lead discussions prior to the main preview we're bringing to you, that live State of the Nation address by the President. And a member of Parliament for Subing, who also was Ghana's High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, and Isaac Osei is here. Isaac Osei, please, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much.
And also Dr. Rashid Popo, Member of Parliament for Wa Central. In an election year, it's important we mention the seats. It's important also. But he's a Minister of State of the Presidency in charge of the private sector of the PPPs. And we're privileged to have you too.
Thank you.
Okay. What do you make foremostly about the dates, November 7? We're told that following those discussions, it was concluded in Parliament, Honorable Isaac said that at least the first Monday of every November will be the timelines for which we're thinking through to have our elections. What do you make of it? And this year it falls on November 7.
Well, to the best of my knowledge, this matter has not been fully discussed in Parliament.
Not concluded yet.
So November 7th, yes, it's up in the air. And I think the earlier, the relevant documents are brought to Parliament for us to debate and approve, the better. With politics, you have to have a certain amount of certainty as to whether it's 7th November or 7th December. At the moment, we don't.
What do you make of it? November 7, but we're told that the thinking around is to have it the first Monday of November, each election year.
Yeah, there has been some discussions on this, and it's been very pointed. And the reason being that we need to have enough time if there should be a runoff. And all the logic has been established, and the agreement has been that we shift it from December to November. So that has been generally agreed by the political parties. And so we believe very strongly that it will come to stay, except that, like my colleague has said, we need to have a wider discussion of it. We need to have a general consensus about it. We need to be certain about the dates and time, so nobody has questions to ask about it.
Okay. Now let's begin discussions with the State of the Nation address, particularly coming from the last one that the President gave, that will be from the last year. And logically, we're facing acute power problems in our country, for which many businesses had suffered. It had led to perceived massive unemployment in many sectors, especially the manufacturing sector. The President enumerated various IPPs or various initiatives to improve the power sector. What would you say 1 year on has been notably the things that we've been able to do as far as the power sector is concerned? And just in summary, before we go into the details, Honorable Isaac Osei.
Well, the President, gave us a headline, a catchphrase, I will fix it. The question is whether he has been able to fix it. Not just for businesses such as those in manufacturing, but also for households. I think some work has been done, but he has not fixed it, because there were many other promises that the President made which have not been fulfilled. We know, for example, that the car power generating capacity ship, we're supposed to get 450 megawatts. We have 235 at the moment. So there's a little bit more, or maybe another ship should be on its way. We know about the Bui Dam, the Bui Authority, and the VRA. And the president made a very important point that it is necessary, as a way of integrating the hydro sector to bring them under one authority. That has not been done. We also know that there are other issues which I'm sure when we go into details we can highlight, which has not been done. We are getting more power, but I can tell you that I live in Laboni, and 2 days ago our lights were completely off until from night to morning. The fact is, it's not whether the lights came on or off, but that the ECG, which the president said will become customer friendly, have not even bothered to tell us why they turned the lights off. You see? So there are various other issues, both regulatory and operational, which we have to deal with. Just let me point to one factor. The president has set up this Ministry of Power, which I thought was a very good move. The minister has resigned. And if this is so important, for 2 months, we don't have a minister responsible for power, to be discussing at the cabinet table the issues really involved. So it's not quite fixed.
And that's just a summary, and already even gives us the indication that, well, we've made some strides. Would you say, for all the critics that we have of government and having a 1 year on assessment, we've had at least some inroads and some positives that we can say as a nation, and even as your government, we have been able to be in a position to conclude that at least some aspects of meeting those promises have been made?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, let me commend the President, His Excellency, the President, John Dramani Mahama, for being forthright and steadfast in ensuring that his promise he made to the nation has been fulfilled. He said, I, John Dramani Mahama, will fix the power problem. And he has done it. Dumsor came to us and was a border to us, and he admitted in the last State of the Nation address the challenges business face about it, big businesses, small businesses, and all that. And he admitted also that it was a cyclical problem that occurred every generation, but he was coming to ensure that this problem was fixed and fixed forever. At least within the space of time he will be president. And thankfully, we are 10% above the demand rates, the demand in Ghana, meaning we've gotten everything we need. We have 10% excess of power generated. And that is something we cannot gloss over. I mean, it's a great achievement and we are happy about it. It is true that we need to straighten up electricity company to make sure it delivers very well, but no longer Dumsor occurs in our lives. If there are power outages, you can't avoid it. Even in the US, in the UK, in Germany, France, they occur. Power outages occur.
Somebody says that's a good excuse for you.
It's not a good excuse.
It's not a very good excuse, is it?
It is not an excuse. What we are talking about is that we are in a human society and these things occur. You can have a generator, best because of 1 or 2 reasons. You can have a vehicle running over, cutting lines and power will be cut for a while. Those are not because we don't have power. They are because they are human errors or challenges that may be as a result of a force majeure, But the problem he has identified has been addressed and fully addressed. And I'm happy to announce it to the nation that the government of John Dramani Mahama has succeeded in doing what he promised he would do in the last State of the Nation address.
Okay, as far as energy is concerned.
As far as energy
All right.
is concerned.
But Mr. Isaac said, now let's look at the matters in detail.
Yes.
The first 2 quarters were periods where we had constant criticism of government about the issues of strategy and the way it was communicated, and whether the absence or availability of strategy was the best means by which we can reach where we are. Yes, down the line, we're having some consistent supplies. Would you say you've been convinced over the last 12 months about a particular strategy, and I'm talking about even if there are 100, let's say in a blue book or blueprint, and by which we've been able to get to where we are?
Well, I think the former Minister of Power did very well in getting the installed capacity up. But you see, installed capacity is not operating capacity. For example, Atuabo, which is supposed to give us 150 units of whatever, is operating at about 40% capacity, which means that with gas, you are just flaring, you are just throwing money away as it is. So there are real issues because the off-taker is not ready to take the gas. So clearly there are also operational difficulties. My good friend, the minister here, is talking about 10% above what is required. But that is not at the level at which we are operating. So there are deficits in certain parts of the country from time to time. You see, and these are real deficits, and we need to look at the whole, architecture that we have put in place to resolve this particular issue. You see, when we talked about Dumso going away, as it were, we do not really understand what is actually happening to operating concerns, businesses who are currently facing the effects of the whole Dumsorization of the economy. You look at somebody's income surplus account, and you find that because they made losses during this period, all the surplus has now moved into the negative. And therefore, if they are a public company, they can't even pay dividends. And it will take them 2-3 years to recover. The private sector minister is here. What sort of backup are they going to give to these organizations?
If you say backup, you mean bailout or incentives?
I don't want to use the word
or availability
bailout,
of some level of capitalization.
But support. We all know what is happening in the financial markets in this country. Many of our people are borrowing at 35%. You see, so the strategy going forward has to be a system where a full range of supporting mechanisms can be put in place to support the private sector. That is the way forward. Or else the private sector cannot make the profits, part of which they can reinvest and expand employment. And that is the crux of the matter. As for individuals who are here, you remember the president in his last State of the Nation address promised that for those who are artisans, like our hairdressers, and they are going to have stand-alone solar systems to support them. Nothing of that sort has happened. But you remember the president also talked about alternative sources of power, wind power, solar power. They even talked about tidal waves. It was all talk. And the president is a very good talker, And you see, once you've talked, you have to put that talk into action. You see, people were waiting to see what alternative sources of power. And I thought the idea was very good. But this president's ideas, some are good, but the implementation has been very weak.
Then, whilst I have to refer to you, Dr. Pelpo, I also have to perhaps also constantly, Mr. Isaac was saying, about the criticism that usually you would be leveling on the president and his government about whether the strategy is the right one, or we're just here because we're just plucking from here one node and entering into the other node, and so just here by chance.
The strategy in terms of providing the capacity, I think is the right one. But when you have a strategy, you must have an action plan.
But you do also agree that you can't achieve everything within the 12-month period.
Well, then you have to say so at the beginning. If within the, for example, this car power business I was talking about, 450 megawatts, I think we know that by the middle of this year, that is in 3 to 4 months, the second power ship should be in. So nobody is quarreling so much about it. We are only flagging it for government to understand that you made this promise. We are expecting it to be done. There are many things the president said for example, on the health issue, for example. All he said was that these things will be ready by 2017. So we are not going to quarrel with that. It's just that when you don't front-end load a lot of the projects you say you will do, nobody then believes that you can finish in the 8 months that is left for you. That's all.
Yeah, actually, I'm very surprised because I don't know
what are you surprised about?
I don't know what argument he's making. The president promised I will kill Doomsaw. He has killed Doomsaw.
But that's just a blanket statement on your part.
But what else? You know, he's talking about car power, and car power.
Promises of renewables, and indeed you have to agree that we have the present state of the nation just in front of us,
let me just
so we have the document.
Yes, and I can tell you that when the president talk about renewable energy, he talk about options that are available to us, you know, to address the challenge, long-term challenge of the country. And I can tell you also that we have signed an agreement, more than 30 agreements, IPP agreements with, you know, power IPPs. Some of them are solar power suppliers, and one of them is going to start operating at the end of the year, start construction power, solar power at the end of the year in the north, 400 megawatts. It's not as if he says this and that is it. The president keeps to his word. Everything he said about the private sector, I don't know how it comes into this argument. He's shifting the poles, which is what I'm surprised about. We are committed to the private sector. The president has appointed a minister at the private sector, at the presidency in charge of private sector. At the middle of this month, specifically on the 16th, 17th, very like the president will be addressing a forum, stakeholder forum, which is going to be an SME financing fair to bring together financiers of business and SMEs together so we can see how interest rates can be addressed and financing of business can multiply. You know, everything about business is something that is also a passion to the president, and we have demonstrated it fully. He hasn't. I have not seen anything he hasn't done that he's complaining about. You know, but if it is power, he's talked about power. He's increased the power capacity. If it is about demand, the demand has increased, but we have also increased installed capacity and generation capacity, and has even exceeded our demand levels. If it is private sector, we are ensuring that the private sector will not suffer because of power. And now, what we have gotten to is to even offset the balance, to have people not using power for business, pay more than people using it for business. It is what is happening now.
Okay.
So we are addressing the challenges.
We're addressing the power challenges, yes. We're not consistently seeing the difficulties we're facing, let's say some 7 months ago, unlike today. But consistently over the last 3 years has been a downturn in the fortunes of businesses. And if we have to do perhaps a scale of preference or some scale up, the manufacturing sector has suffered consistently. Now, those are the micro level, and the president, and he's also quoted, the barbers, the hairdressers, etc., have been the most sufferers. How have we, alongside, tried to synchronize the difficulties they have because of the downturns they are experiencing in their business, while at the same time providing or trying to shore up the problems we have in the power sector? So at the end of the day, whilst we're providing power, they're also seeing some upward good fortunes in their business.
That's how come all these financial state institutions are established. The year program, to allow these people to access money cheaply and be able to boost their business.
Can you confidently say they do that? They can access?
They can access. They are accessing. People access 10,000, 50,000, etc.
In real terms?
In real terms. Call yes.
In what quantums?
I'm saying from 5,000, people can take 10,000, people can take 50,000 from yes fund. And it's targeted at those young people who you want to boost their businesses, who suffered by the wayside because of the challenges, accumulated challenges we have. You know, this is not an NDC creation. This is not a John Mahama creation, the power challenges we have. It is not the John Mahama's creation. John Mahama came in 2 years, you know, 1 year, and the power challenges occurred. And it's because of challenges previous governments, including the NPP, had, and they've even failed to add any single megawatt apart from the combined effort of the mining companies to add 80 megawatts. You know, they have not added any single megawatts during the 8 years of their reign, so, or their term. So what we did was to solve the problems other governments failed to address. And we couldn't control the water supply to the hydro power plants, because that had been the major source of energy to us. Akosombo alone generates about 1,020 megawatts, or is supposed to have that capacity. Bui has to have has a capacity of 400 megawatts, and then Pong 160 megawatts. And that combined effort before John Mahama was the biggest supply of power to the nation. So as soon as we had lesser rains, and then lesser inflow into the dams.
Then we have difficulties.
Then we had difficulties. And this president said, look, we can no longer continue to depend on seasonal rainfalls to generate power. Business would continue to suffer. Ghana is as a corporate nation is much more serious than that. I will address the problem, and within 1 year he has fixed the problem. We need to be commending his effort, and not be criticizing and shifting the poles and talking about issues that were not within the parameters of what he presented to us.
Okay, now
let me just say that everything I've said, I have read from this, the State of the Nation
we all know
address.
that.
So for my good friend to say that someone is shifting the poles, then perhaps the president shifted the poles in his State of the Nation address.
No.
But you see, these are the facts on the ground. My good friend is talking about businesses accessing cheap money. There's no cheap money in this country. Everybody knows that.
Because the rates are as high as they can be, as far as the lending rates.
Because of the poor economic management by this government, which has led to huge budget deficits and has led to government competing with the private sector for the limited funds available in the banking sector. That is a fact. And no one can dispute this. And this is exactly what is happening. When I go with my business to go and borrow, I don't go and borrow at 10%, or I don't go and borrow at 8 or 6% that my neighbors in Togo and what do you call Ivory Coast are borrowing at. I borrow at 35%. How then do you compete? So there are fundamental issues of the economy which we as a people must address. And we can use all the fine language. We are doing this, we are doing, at the end of the day, what will happen? When the cedi is depreciating at such a rate, you know, and people are losing the value of the investment that they have made, those are the real issues which I believe my friend is engaged in trying to address. But the fact of the matter is that businesses are suffering. They are not making the profits which will enable them to reinvest. And when we talk about this, you say shifting the poles. We are not shifting the poles. We are telling the story.
But beyond years, we have various capital funds that are available. You can even access credit for Maslow and the other initiatives. Of course, the argument can be made as to whether we have the numbers who can access, and whether they have the fundamentals for their business.
And then finally, just let me say that it is not true that previous governments failed to add anything to the generation capacity. Even you mentioned Bui. Bui is not a creation of the present government. It was President Kufuor who signed on to it and who undertook the sword cutting ceremony, which, you know, but government is a continuum. Once this President Kufuor had started the whole thing, it was continued by the present government, and thank God we finished it.
Okay.
So to say that nothing was done, and then all these, you look at the president's State of the Nation address, he has referred to many of the Asogli and others. These are all private sector companies. Okay. So to say that the mining companies did something there, The environment was created for them to do it.
Okay.
And that is what is
Now, we know that today, if we're talking about the state of the nation, as far as security is, as far as health is, agriculture, then it means that fundamentally, over the last 12 months, we would have to draw conclusions on how we've been able to manage security, and issues have been brought up, bringing into the country Gitmo rejects who have been inmates of the Guantanamo Bay prison. And also over the period also, we've had some insecurity inland, importation of arms, and these caches have been intercepted at various borders, etc. That raised questionable issues, Mr. Rashid Popo.
Questionable issues about
the state of security in many respects.
Well, I think that so far our security system has been very effective. We have not seen any serious lapses in security that would put the Ghanaian in serious security threats. And we can commend our security services for for good work.
We've had invasion of Fulani herdsmen in various areas of the country.
I'm not talking about a perfect system. I'm talking about a situation where you can say that they have at least achieved a lot. And we've been living in peace for a considerable while, and Ghana is noted for that. And the Gitmo prisoners should not give any impression of lack of security or any security lapses in our system. And Fulani herdsmen, as you are looking at, or as you are citing, is something that is also being addressed, and you know about that. So my take is that so far, throughout the lives of Ghanaians, you know, in the new dispensation from 1992, all the governments have shown concern about security and have been very committed to it. His Excellency John Mahama's administration has been very committed to security, and you can see that lots of measures are taken because of the nature of the arrangements, the threats, terrorist threats that we are seeing elsewhere. You've seen an increased surveillance of security in the country. Try going into any of the public hotels and these places that you have people gathering. You will find a lot of security checks that are put in place. You know, let's not pray for it. Let's not pray that something bad happens.
Well, a lot of things, bad things have happened in the last couple of months. If we have to draw a summation of what the incidents have been, they don't give the self-assurance to the Ghanaian generally on the streets.
For example?
Well, a colleague of yours was just murdered in cold blood just a few weeks ago. We've had a number of incidents that tend to give the assurance to the ordinary Ghanaian that I don't have a certain self-worth of general security, does it?
Yeah, but I'm saying that the general security you are talking about is different from this personal security issue that you have brought up. And it is regrettable, JB, let me take this opportunity.
Well, not particularly citing...
But you've just mentioned him, so I want to take the opportunity to express my deep condolence, you know, to his family and his wife and children. He was a great guy and was a very good friend of mine, and in fact, a friend to everybody. So what happened was a big blow to all of us. But having said that, it is also the reason sometimes MPs call for security. If you can cite it as an example of lack of security, they are saying provide public security to them, and the public is up in arms against them. But the truth also is that the security arrangement that allows people to interact freely, to walk out, you know, to go onto the street and walk without any fear, you know, to conduct their businesses without looking behind them to see if somebody is going to stab them, etc., is provided by the states. And so far, I think the arrangement has been good. You know, if there's any lapses, it's important to mention them and bring them up so we can address them, because it's something that the nation as a whole is committed to.
Yeah.
It is, for me,
yes.
It is the steps and also the kind of the kind of posture you get from the various setups that will give you the assurance. And I cited these ones particularly for your colleague, etc., just as an example. We've had various incidents, a killing of a politician. We've had sometimes things happening to ordinary Ghanaians who may not be prominent at all. And I'm saying that if you, let's say you were an ordinary Ghanaian, would you say for all the things that happen, you would be walking or living in your house and say generally, I'm okay as far as security is?
Well, let me just say that, in my view, the police and other security agencies are doing the best they can given the resources available to them. In terms
Meaning
of
what?
Given the
They've
resources,
not been given enough resources.
I haven't said that. I've said given the resources that they have now, I think they are doing their best. But the point that you raise is a matter of personal safety. It's a matter of personal safety. And the incident that you mentioned, the unfortunate incident, the callous and brutal murder of J.B. Dankwedu, it's something which shook the country. But it is symptomatic of things which have been happening over the last few years. You mentioned the Fulani matter. It is not something which happened only yesterday. I know various task forces have been set up in various areas. But it is something which even a court decision in Agugu, we failed to implement the decision of the court, you see. So there are many, many things which are happening. The carnage on our roads, that's also, the whole question of personal safety, the carnage on our roads, which recently we saw what happened in
Kintampo.
In Kintampo. The president went to visit some of them and all that. But those are the issues that I think we probably, ought to look at when we come to matters of personal safety. For me, it is important that other things probably ought to be done. You go to places like the UK and public buildings all have CCTVs, for example. This is just one example of
Public
how,
lanes?
Yes. At various...
You have personal data of people for which you can always cross-check.
Well, even just CCTVs on the roads and places like that. You go on the major roads in the country. Recently, one MP on the Nsawam stretch, he was going to Kumasi early evening. Somebody threw a stone at his car, and then he stopped to find out what was happening. And then people came armed and took away his money and everything. He reported the matter to the police. So even on our highways, in the north, for example, between Kintampo and Tamale used to be very, very, very dangerous. This new road which has been built, the Tuna Solar going on to Boli, that road used to be a place where you couldn't go at night. So we have a duty even to light up our highways, provide street lighting at...
To give some self-assurance of...
To give some self-assurance. These are just two, issues I've thrown up. So personal safety remains an issue.
But generally,
I will say that Ghana is much safer than most of the countries that we find around.
Okay.
But we still need to do more.
All right. I would want to wind up, if not perhaps also begin a section which will lead up to the preview we'll be having extensively on the President's State of the Nation address, for which we're going to bring you complete coverage here on Joy News. And as always, you want to get interactive on our Facebook platform. Joy News on TV is a page's name. And then also through the number 056-800,000, you can give us a lot more messages on WhatsApp. And now let's focus on the subject of infrastructure and how also that tends to give leeway or lead up to other relevant sectors, health, agriculture, etc. If it's agriculture, we'll say we're building irrigation infrastructure and things like that. Health, we're building facilities. If it's roads, we're having various highways that you always point out to as a government. And I have this green book, okay? We call it Accounting to the People, Changing Life, Transforming. And I've perused this very document over and over. I think this will be my 5th time I'm doing that. Massive infrastructure, but you're always getting the criticism from your critics as a government that you have borrowed so much, you're just not showing enough for it.
After this, I don't know whether they still continue to say that. After telling our story, the narratives are changing.
There's how many pages? 207, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah, the thinking is been changing. The criticism has been frustrated because we have lots of things done in this era, this very small epoch of John Mahama's administration. So much has been done, so much has been achieved, so much phenomenal infrastructural achievement has been made. I mean, it has never happened that within 3 years, a government has achieved what it has achieved. This is not a sing-song. It is visibility. It is very clear for everybody to see the amount of hospitals that have been built, the amount of clinics that have been built, the amount of schools, new schools that have been constructed, both basic and secondary, the universities that have been constructed, the ports and harbors that have been constructed. A new port is being done through a PPP arrangement. The Tema Harbor is being expanded. The motorway, there's a program to expand it. I mean, so much. You can't imagine it. I'm sure that when you put all of this together, the cost elements together, will be overshooting the amount we have borrowed because there is an element of infusion of private money into the economy, you know, through the PPP kinds of arrangement where you don't need to pay anything up front. I mean, so much has been done. I don't know what kind of criticism anybody will be giving, you know. So I think that we need to be reflective in our lives and we need to begin to re-engineer our thinking about what a government should do for the people. We know that this economy must move from a lower middle income country to a higher middle income country. We cannot do that without the required kind of infrastructure that will match it. And that's why it's been our avowed expectation and need to work towards it and to achieve something out of it. You know, see the highways that are springing up, the Nkrumah circle. Everything that needs to be done is being tackled. And I know with another term for John Mahama, so much will be done. You know, I think that everybody should be on the side of progress. We should be on the side of development, and we should be on the side of John Mahama. You know, not because he's an NDC person and I'm an NDC person. If you identify a leader who arises out of your country, who is committed to the nation and doing everything to create value in the nation, people should be on the side of it. I have a professor, Professor Brichum, who said that in their youth he used to be against Nkrumah. When Nkrumah died, and then he reflected on who the man was, what he achieved. He regretted that he wasn't on the path of Nkrumah. He wasn't working with him, so he could associate himself with much of the progress he made. And I'm calling on the youth to see that this is a new breed of a politician, making life different, changing the lives of people, creating a condition that Ghanaians will one day look back and say they are thankful, and they should be willing to associate with it and be willing to be part of this move to change Ghana. And if they do, they definitely will one day be thankful that they have, you know, despite what political party you belong. It's like in the Kufuor regime, he did so well.
Okay.
And those who associated with the regime can be thankful today that they built the presidency.
All the things that
and all the things he did.
Okay.
And this is the kind of thing I think people should be associated to give John Mahama a second term.
Well, he's campaigning though. But Dr. Rashid Papu is only saying that, well, if you were in his seat, you should be.
Well, let me.
No, I'm only calling on him to be part of the success.
let me.
He's a good guy. I know him very well.
But infrastructure, the criticism against government has been that well, we've been building, we've been doing things, we've not been prioritizing.
Let me
You know, he's a presidential material.
Let me just say one thing. Look, if you cannot accept criticisms, then you will not find solutions to the problems that we have. This is a saying from Malcolm X, you know. So, criticisms there will be. You've talked about prioritization. You think it is very important to asphalt the ring road from end to end when most of the country does not even have a little
So you're saying that asphalting the city's roads is not important?
I say it is important.
But
it's
is it a
not
priority?
as important as providing access to some of the villages that we have. That is all I'm saying. You see, so the things that you do for the public in Accra and Kumasi to see are not as important as the things that we do elsewhere within the country. And this is a very important point that we must make. It is true that government has made, has done all these things that he says. But the fact of the matter is that when I go to the filling station, I know I'm paying far more than I should be paying. If things are working so well, we shouldn't be paying the kind of ex-pump prices that we are paying, overloaded with taxes. If things are working well, I mentioned the interest rate. I shouldn't be paying that interest rate at 35%. It means that things are not moving very, very well. If things are moving well, then the Minister of Finance should have the fiscal space to implement the government's development program. But he doesn't. And our reliance for everything, practically everything that we do in this country on foreign loans, it's just unbelievable. So things are not going on well. As for the dream that the NDC has of a second or another term for John Mahama and hence a third term for the NDC as a political party, I think the earlier they get down to brass tacks, the better. It is not going to happen because the people of Ghana out there are suffering. Everybody, you ask everybody what is happening to your pocket. How much does the income that you earn, how far does it go? That is the question. There's no government of this country who has not undertaken infrastructural projects. The much maligned Champon regime was responsible for the Pond Dam, was responsible for the housing estates in Dansuman
and many schools.
And many schools. You see, what President Kufuor did, which my good friend didn't mention, he mentioned the presidential palace. That's just a small thing. The importance of the providing safety nets in the implementation of the National Health Insurance scheme. That is very, very important. The whole idea of setting up a Metro Mass system to replace the Omnibus Service Authority, which was killed during their time, earlier time, it's also a matter of great importance that all of us should be talking about. The free maternal care for women going into hospitals, antenatal as well as postnatal, that is extremely important for the ordinary citizens of this country. And there are many more, social interventions which a liberal democratic party, as against the social democratic party, has put in place. So clearly, you cannot say that some government did not do certain things and that this government has done everything. This government, like every other government, has done some things. But the ordinary people of the country, that is where we should be looking at.
As you wrap up, from the observation I get from his comments is that the bread and butter issues have not been tackled adequately, have not been looked at adequately by government. It's almost like government not empathizing with the ordinary Ghanaian.
I'm surprised because I don't know. He's talked about the structure of the economy where people are saying we borrow money, people don't have enough. It was the same kind of critique that we had about them. They talk about coming in, we have the men who will change the economy, we are going to change the Goggisberg economy into a real economy where they failed to do it and they couldn't move the economy 1 inch
and you are doing
from
that.
Where it is. We definitely are tackling it. And you need to borrow massively to inject into the economy in order to change the structure. It's not as easy as that. And that's exactly what we are doing. You need to have the required kind of infrastructure in order to parachute people out of poverty. We are doing it. And His Excellency John Mahama did not mince words when he said our next line of commitment will be to create wealth for the people of Ghana. I mean, you need to have the basis before you can do it. And that's what we have done. So it is not as if it is just by chance. These things are happening according to policy, according to plan, according to programs, and we will see the manifestation in our next term. We are very confident that the people of Ghana are seeing it. If John Mahama, if John Kufuor, John Jerry Lawrence did 2 terms, John Kufuor did 2 terms, John Mahama is going to do 2 terms. And they know that if they vote for him for the 2 terms, he's going to create something that nobody has done for them in their lives. And it's going to happen.
Okay, Rafa, you have to go to Parliament.
Well, I say it is possible, for example, if we reduce the corruption. The president talked about corruption in this his last year's State of the Nation. And then you have smarties and you can't do anything about it. You go and brand a bus with your face in color, using state resources, the rest of the other in black and white, as if they have transited and therefore you are. You see, there are many little things that we do. So reduce corruption. We know that elimination of corruption is very difficult. And then do something about the economy of our country. To say that the next step is the creation of wealth, providing the basic infrastructure should give us the platform for the creation of wealth. But it is because it has not been provided in the critical areas of the economy. All these health things that we are talking about, they are supposed to come to fruition at the end of the year. And then the Kumasi Military Hospital, 500 bed, they said here, it has not even been started. How do you finish in 8 months? All these other hospitals here, they have not gone anywhere. Akufo-Addo's government will come and complete it. Thank you very much. All right,
so we've had in the studio Isaac Osei, who is a member of parliament for Subing, and also Rashid Pelpo, and Dr. Rashid Pelpo is a member of parliament for West Central, and also the minister, the president in charge of the PPPs and the private sector. And they have to rush to go to Parliament. And we know that the President's State of the Nation address is taking place, and we're bringing to you live preview as well as live telecasts and post interviews and analysis of that very State of the Nation address right here. We're taking a break. When we come back, we'll have a lot more for you.